Welcome into the Harvest, friends. As I like to say, we are here to bring you the confidence and clarity you need to be a disciple and make disciples in the everyday places of life. I'm Abigail, and I'm here with my favorite co-hosts, Andrew and Keith. Hey, guys.
Hey,
What's
Abby.
up, Abby?
So I am pretty pumped about getting into today's show. So we're just going to roll right on into it because we've got some great stuff to talk about today. And I'm sure we'll get to our personal lives throughout the show. So stay tuned to hear what's going on in our little hearts because it always leaks out a little bit. So we have a listener question for you guys. If we look to Jesus' example, is there a difference between how he was making disciples and making apostles? Is there a difference in our expectation from us as people if we're making disciples or if we're supposed to be gifted as apostles? I think I got that question right. So who wants to give this a shot first?
I'll take
Andrew?
a stab at it. Yeah, and then Keith can jump in. So when I first read this question, the first thought that came to my mind is that, the word apostle is one of those tricky words. It means different things to different people, or some people are just not real familiar with it at all. Maybe they see it as a word that existed in the New Testament, but isn't so relevant to us today. So that's the first thing I would say is that we need to define our terms. We need to understand, what are we talking about with making a distinction between apostles and disciples. But the second thought that came to mind is that, Jesus is our model for disciple making. So I do think that we should look to him and what he did with those first disciples who were sent out as apostles. So that was my first thought, is that we need to understand the word apostle. So in a very brief way, I would say that apostles are those who take a lead role in breaking new ground. Like that was true in the beginning with the 12. They were sent out, which is what the word apostle literally means. So in Mark 3:14, it says that he called his disciples and he selected 12 that they might be with him and that he might send them out to preach. And he named them apostles. So there is a distinction between the larger group of disciples and this smaller group of 12 who were apostles. So it was not the default, I guess, is what I would want to say there. Not all disciples were apostles. And that was part of the question is, should we be doing what Jesus did with the 12 specifically as apostles? But apostleship is not the default. However, we should follow Jesus, and the way he discipled the 12, I think, is still something that is relevant to us that we should imitate. I do believe that every mature disciple should become a disciple maker, that is the default. So not all of us are going to become apostles where we're going out and breaking new ground. We're not all called and gifted in that way, but we all are called to mature as disciples and become disciple makers, to be part of this mission of making disciples to all nations. So I don't know if you want to add to that or clarify that, Lakeith.
Yeah, I just like the question from Wes. I thought that was a really good question. I think for us, all of us on the Western Hemisphere as believers, we wonder about those things. Like we want to know, was there a difference between this and this? And I do like that he was saying, we should look to Jesus for those answers. But to me, it's kind of comical because Jesus didn't provide a lot of clarity on titles. I think we care a lot more about titles and names than he does. So it leaves a lot of gray area to be like, are you this or are you that? So I do think that the answer to that question is in the question. So I think looking at Jesus and seeing what he did and how he developed people is going to unlock both, whether you are the disciple or you're the apostle that's sent, like the one that's sent out and that's conquering new ground. And but yeah, I wonder about titles too, man. But you look at Jesus and you're like, man, I don't really see too much here in these gospels about titles. So a lot of room to interpret.
Yeah, it's really, I love that we're doing this question today because just last night, my kids like to ask really deep theological questions, right before bed, and you're like, you know what? I'm not even going to tell you what the answer is, even though because it's 8:00 and we're going to bed. But my daughter actually asked why there were no women in the 12. And Brett was just like, go to bed. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But it was really, it really kind of got into this sort of topic of like, we talked about how actually he did have women disciples, but the apostles, because they were going to be heading up and starting the church, needed to be men in that, era, in that culture. But it really got into some like seriously sticky waters. And I was just like, can you just go to bed instead? Like, why don't you have these questions over breakfast? I don't
know. That's a good question.
Anyway,
I hate to tell you this, Abigail, but at least in our experience, as the kids move into their teen years, that is when all the deep conversations happen, except it'll be like 11, midnight, 1 a.m. That's when they really want to talk about the deep existential issues of life. So good training there in the Wilson household this week.
I guess I better get some sleep because the years ahead, there's just more sleep deprivation around the corner. Those of you with babies just know that it's just going to change, but be the same. So great, optimistic outlook. All right. Hopefully we covered that question. I don't know. Wes can get back to us if we failed, but he can grade us on that. But I want to get into today's topic because I think it's a really good one. We did an episode on anxiety a few weeks ago. And to be honest with you, what we're talking about today is what probably produces the most anxiety for me as a believer. And that is, why is there so much disagreement among believers? Is this a new thing that we're dealing with today in 2021? Or is this something that's always been from the beginning of time? And more importantly, how do we deal with it as believers? So we're going to dig into this today. I think it's important because if you, like myself, have even the tiny bit of like little bit dabbling in either attending church or even on social media, then you probably know that there are disagreements going on right now. So I think this is important for us to get into here at Into the Harvest. So we're just going to start by kind of looking at what do you guys think is the greatest divides that we're seeing amongst believers today? And is this new? I think maybe that's probably the biggest thing. Is this a new development? Should we be worried? What do you guys think? Keith, I'm going to start with you if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't think it's new. I think people have always been jacked up. Like if you ask me, I think it was Cecil Bean had a quote that says, the saints in heaven owe the glory, the saints on earth, another story. And I think it's so true. It's just, there's always going to be those moments where, you go way back to after the fall, like Cain and Abel, instantly, like there was beef, and that one was really bad. He killed his brother. It's pretty mean. But yeah, and you think back to the book of Corinthians when Paul was literally trying to clear up, like, hey, are you following people? Are you following me? And some say I'm following Jesus. It's like, man, Christ is not divided, and so I don't know if this is something that we're going to be able to conquer, like the disciples all over the place. Like, let's call down fire on people. Can we be the greatest? Just all these things that separate us. Peter in this shining moment with Jesus, his redemption. Ask about John, like, hey, what about him? What are you going to do with him? So I think it's human nature. So it's been going on forever. I think something that we can do to overcome it really is focusing on the examples in the Bible of overcoming those kind of disagreements and the things that cause us to not be united. I love Abraham and Lot, how he handled that situation with him, and hey, you take this land and we'll take this land, and God will prosper us both. And of course, Lot kept moving and it didn't work out. But that's my thought. Just that it's always been happening and it's going to happen, and we need to look at the Bible for some conflict resolution.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, and I was thinking the same thing, like even back to the garden with Adam and Eve, that, as soon as we got off track with God, it introduced differences within the relationships between people. So we see that from the very beginning. It's still happening today. Maybe the thing that's new today, Abigail, is like it's kind of like reality TV. I think families always had drama, but we didn't always necessarily see it put out there on the street. And I do think that that's different, that maybe it seems more visible today because it is going out on social media, or they're very, very public debates and disagreements happening. I don't know if that's necessarily worse, but maybe that's a difference between 100 years ago and today it's just, you're sort of surrounded by it. But I agree with Keith, and we're going to get into some scripture passages here in a moment. But the Bible does talk about it, so it's not a new problem. I don't know that it's even worse today than it was at the beginning, but maybe we see it more.
Yeah, I agree. I think, like I said, it causes the most anxiety for me. I hate conflict. Like, I will run from it more than anything. Like, I'm not great at conflict resolution because I'm not there to do the resolution. I'm like down the road. So I think it feels harder because we do live in this time where the church down the street and whatever internal issues they're having are for all of us to see on like their Facebook pages, and just we all can like live tweet it in action. We can literally see videos of pastors talking terribly about other pastors and everyone laugh about it, and then that can be put out on YouTube. So I feel like all of our like dirty secrets of being believers is just really out there a lot more than it has been in the past. But let's go ahead and get into, I think Keith has already gotten us started on this, but just biblical examples that we see to kind of help us feel better that we maybe are not the worst ever. We're just equally as bad as the generations before us. And maybe as we throw our biblical predecessors under the bus, hopefully we can also find some help for us too. So Keith, you already kind of gave us a little of your examples you had. Andrew, do you have any that you wanted to cover today?
Well, this will fit some with what Keith was sharing. When I was thinking about what causes these disagreements and conflicts within the church, a couple things came to mind. I think one is just selfishness, and you could say that those are disagreements that are interpersonal. And so that's one of the things that we face as believers is, we can be selfish, and that can create conflict within the church, disagreements within the church between believers, and then you can have whole groups being offended towards others. And it's more of I think a maturity and a sin issue is specifically with selfishness. But then I do think that there are disagreements that happen that are more doctrinal. You get camps, and that's really what I think Keith was referring to with Corinthians, is that there were groups of believers who were really coalescing around certain leaders, and they felt like they really had the stuff, and these other people, these other believers were somehow something less than what they should be in terms of their beliefs or their practices as believers. And to me, that really is a misplaced identity. I wasn't thinking about 1 Corinthians actually when I was reflecting on this, but that's how Paul addresses it, is like, hey, did Paul die for you? Did Apollos rise from the dead on your behalf? So why are you following these human leaders? It's one of my beefs with Calvinism, is I think so many Calvinists, they're more proud of being Calvinists than they are being Christians.
Oh man.
Well, and
so we're gonna have a fight, is what you're saying here on the show. No.
it's not even so much a theological thing. I actually think that most people that I have met who are Reformed have a very high value for doctrinal accuracy. But the way that it comes out is it can be a very separatist view of Christians, that we have the truth, and because I'm a Calvinist, So I don't know. Like, again, like who are you talking to there? Like if you're talking to someone who's not very versed in the church, they don't even know what you're talking about. So you're really talking to other believers, and you're sort of elevating that, hey, we've got something that you should have, and you don't. So yeah, I didn't mean to necessarily go after the Calvinists there.
I mean, I feel like now we have an object lesson to work with here.
Yeah,
Zach can pull that quote, and then we can have a whole big fight over on social media about it.
I think cool. I think the point I want to come back to, just to make sure we get it, is that that the conflicts, I think, in my mind, they come from two sources. They can be interpersonal, because I'm being selfish towards Lakeith, and that creates offense and separation within bodies of believers, or they can be camps where whole churches are at odds with other believers because they feel like they've got a closer seat to Jesus than the other believers. So, and the Bible addresses both.
Oh man, Andrew, I love it, and that you really, you really went for it, and I appreciate it. I'm going to do the same to make you feel better.
Go for the Baptist. Go for the end of the harvest.
I don't. Yeah, I'll pick somebody. I'm gonna pick somebody good. To me, what came to mind was James. The book of James to me is just like a great picture, and it like always both simultaneously makes me feel convicted, but also like feel better because poor James is having to deal with the church, and kind of like bring these like hardcore truths to the church at that time. And particularly in James 4, I like literally the first verse is, what causes quarrel and what causes fights among you? It is it not your passions at war? And this really hit home for me. I think so often we maybe hide it behind theological issues or like biblical truth. That really it's just about our like sinful hearts. And I hate to say it because that means that I'm the same way. For me, it's politics. Like people are just so incredibly sure that their political party is the only way that Christians should vote. And if you are on the other side, then you're probably not a follower of Jesus. And boy, does that make me sad. And I think I can, but if I look deeply at like who I voted for and why I voted for them, is there deep down some sort of gain for me personally? Do I think that political party is going to like make my life better or keep the status quo because I kind of like it the way it is? Those things, if we really dig deep, that sinful heart is always kind of there. And so I really love James 4 because he just goes for the jugular. He does not mince words. And he really says, submit yourselves, therefore, to God and resist the devil, because that truly is the only solution for us in these matters of just being humble and assuming that we don't know everything and just really keep our eyes on Jesus, as most of these things are kind of quibbly, like you were saying, Andrew. Like, it probably doesn't come down to salvation. I mean, maybe it does for the Calvinists, but I do think that a lot of times it's just my pride that's getting in the way. And whether that's like in a personal, like you're saying, like just one-on-one relationship that's in trouble, or much bigger church at large, big C. Anyway, Keith, I want to hear from you. See what you have to say for us.
I know, y'all getting my gears turning. I don't have any big things to call out on that. No, I know, right? No, that was good. I got me thinking. I was like, man, I don't want to get straight into our practical advice, but I'm kind of itching to do so.
Hey, go ahead, Keith.
Are you sure?
Get in. Yes, just go for it. It's fine.
All right. Well, yeah, I kind of think of Apollos with Priscilla and Aquila, like going back to Corinthians. I got to riff off that example, but just that, Paul's like, hey, don't take another believer to court. Like, it's better to suffer the wrong. Like, they got a whole dance for it on Fortnite to take the L thingy. It's like Christians are good at taking the L. Like, we don't want to lose. We want to. You brought a pride at me, and we will fight to the death for some things that are minors in our faith, like straight up minors, and we'll fight him to the death. But I think Priscilla and Aquila did a good job with Apollos, because when he was giving this message and he's preaching the gospel, he left some things out. And instead of going at him directly in public and just putting him on blast in front of everybody, they pulled him to the side and explained to him a more perfect way to understand the gospel. And I thought that was great, because he went on to do good work, and they maintained a great relationship, because of how they handled that. So I do like that example that there is a way to do it that won't tear down another person in the faith, but you can also correct them to get them on a path so that they can understand the gospel better. So, my advice is, just to handle it like similar to the way they did. Like, don't put them on blast. Don't blast them in a status or a story or a live video. Like, if you really love that person and care about them and their salvation, then go talk to them, privately.
Yeah.
And a lot of good can come from that.
Yeah, hit them up in the DMs instead of on
DM, right? Sneak in there, man. Sneak in there.
Yeah, it's so true. James came to mind for me as well, Abigail, a little bit earlier in the book, though, in James 1. And I think this will fit with what you were just sharing, Lakeith. In James 1:19 and 20, he tells his readers that they know these things, but so it's not a matter of do we know the right information.
Yeah.
This you know, my beloved brethren, but let everyone be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. For the anger of man does not accomplish the righteousness of God. And of course, so again, like this isn't a new problem. This was written to people 2,000 years ago, because our tendency is to know the right information and then be quick to anger, quick to speak, but slow to really listen and try to understand where someone's coming from. So it's a real opportunity for us as believers, I think, because this isn't just a Christian problem. This is a societal problem for sure right now, where people are very quick to anger, quick to speak, slow to listen. We don't want to even enter into a conversation with those who might feel differently or believe differently than us. So, but as believers, we can be real standouts in a good way in the society and culture that we're a part of, if we just follow that advice that James is giving to us about being slow to anger, quick to hear, quick to listen, slow to speak.
Oh, yeah. It's really funny. I am memorizing Philippians 4 right now. Like barely, you guys. I'm in verse 3. So I'm like just started.
You started.
Hey,
but,
you're in chapter 4.
Yeah, I know. So yes, I'm in chapter 4. But luckily, you guys, in verse 2 of Philippians 4, Paul literally calls out two ladies who are not getting along. You guys, poor Eudora and whatever her name is, I cannot pronounce it. Do we know how to pronounce the second name? I'm not sure.
I actually thought about this couple, but yes, I love that you're going to this passage.
I mean, I want to meet them in heaven and be like, how do you feel that go down in history as the two ladies that just got like thrown under the bus? I love like it's so rough. Yeah. Anyway, I love how he handles it though, because he pulls them back to the fact that they were laboring side by side for the gospel. And I love this, just let's get some perspective here. Are we going to quibble about whatever? Like, we don't know what they were fighting about. I really wish we did. Boy, that would be good stuff. But we don't. And so that's probably for the best. We can just put in whatever squabble that you have personally, just pretend that that's what they were fighting about, because honestly, it's not important. It really does come down to laboring in the harvest together, which is what we're all about here at Into the Harvest. So I really love this example, and I love just how he like draws it back to, and then in verse 5, which I haven't memorized yet, but I have read it, it says, let your reasonableness be known to everyone. And so I think that's something that we as believers could really strive for, honestly. Could we be known for being reasonable? Could we? So I really love this. It's challenging for me. I want to be known for being reasonable and for laboring in the harvest, laboring for the gospel above whatever it is that we fight about. So anyway.
Yeah. No, that's great. And I don't know how you say that lady's name either. I always say Sintiki, but I don't know if that's right. Yodia and Sintiki.
I've heard Syndicate. I don't know if I'm
Syndicate.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've heard I can't even do it. Sanctity.
Right.
I even listened to the audio, version audio,
and
had the guy tell me, and I couldn't even repeat what he said.
Oh, dang.
You guys, right? Send us a video of yourself saying this name in Philippians 4:2.
That'd be dope.
Help us out. Just go over on Instagram or Facebook, send us a little shot of yourself saying it, and it'll help me with my memory verses. Okay, I think we did our very best. We just probably scratched the surface on this, but I really loved our conversation today, guys. Thanks so much for your input. I think it'll help me with my anxiety on this topic. So we're just going to go on into our next segment. And this is kind of our cultural current events topic that we like to get into. Today's is really based on the idea that we as Western believers are all very busy, maybe not so much in COVID times, but we're all still pretty packed in with our activities. And we just kind of want to talk about how we can still be outward focused and be the church even when we're doing our favorite hobbies and activities. So I'm excited about this one because it means that Andrew and Keith have to tell me like what they like to do in their spare time and how they've used that for the gospel. So I'm pretty pumped. Who wants to go?
Andrew, I want to hear yours, man. I gotta go second on this one.
Yeah, so mine has shifted over the years, which I think is normal. But
you're old now.
Yeah, and kids, in the past, there's so many great opportunities. I mean, you're sort of forced into these interactions when your kids are in youth sports or when you're going to field trips and PTA meetings. So that was I know for us historically, that was a big opportunity for us to connect with others and build relationships with others, outside of the normal connections that we had with other believers. So more recently, and then 2020 was kind of crazy too. People weren't necessarily wanting to hang out with strangers, at least around here. But something I've started doing over the past year, Keith knows, is I've always been a runner, but I've kind of taken it to a different level this past past year. So. I started
Okay.
I started doing these long runs last summer just on my own. I wasn't training for anything. I just wanted to be outside and to be in the sun. So I would run. But then I started to realize that, man, I'm spending some time doing this, So, and I have to admit here, this is actually a real discipleship story, because when I run, if someone says like, hey, let's go for a run, something inside of me dies, because when I run, I want to be by myself, basically. Like I like being by myself in my own head, in my own thoughts. But I began to think like, hey, I'm spending a lot of time, and I wonder if there are like running clubs. And sure enough, there are running clubs,
everywhere,
out the wazoo. So I've joined a couple of running clubs here in the Chula Vista, San Diego area, and made some connections there. Going to be doing a race with some fellow San Diegans in Utah, because all the California races have been canceled or postponed.
Thanks, Utah.
Yeah, Utah. They're still doing it. But yeah, that's just been an opportunity to do something that I enjoy and that I would be doing anyways. But allow others to enter into that and to begin to make some connections that are outside of folks that I would normally meet with. So that's kind of the most recent version for me.
Wow, Andrew, so you really literally died to self, because you just said that it made you die on the inside, and you're doing it. Good job. That's really good.
I sort of I feel bad because sometimes people will say, because it is a great time. A big part of our ministry is life on life. And so if people are like, oh, you like to run? I like to run. Let's go for a run together. And I'm like, running is my thing. Running is
Did you run with Wes? Did y'all run the race?
No, I'm actually running with a friend this weekend. Actually, Wes, Wes. Actually, Wes did our question.
The question.
Wes of the questions. He asked that while running. Andrew,
he thought it up anyways.
Yeah. So I just want you to know that in our friendship, you and I respect you so much. I will never ask you to run.
You'll never.
She won't cross that.
I promise.
You won't intrude.
It's a line I will never cross. You're welcome.
That's why I wanted to go second, because it's perfect. So a long time ago, I jacked up my leg playing basketball, ruptured my Achilles. Yeah. Came out of it like, Andrew, let's run a marathon, So we run a marathon. Yeah. It goes okay. We finish. Thank the Lord. And Andrew just kind of kept running. He pulled a Forrest Gump. He just kept running, So then Andrew introduced me to smoking meats, or smoking, just using a smoker. And now I can't stop.
Right.
About that.
Yeah. What kind of smoking are we doing here in California?
No, oh man, thank you. Sorry. Smoking meats. Yeah. Meats, briskets, turkeys, wings, that kind of stuff. But it was Andrew who, so I feel like we traded off habits. Like, I mean, he was a runner beforehand, but he hadn't run a marathon in, I don't know,
years, decades.
And now he's running them like every Saturday or something like that. So, and now I'm smoking like pretty often. So it's just funny to me. But we've been playing chess on Sundays before our Sunday morning gathering. So we'll do like breakfast and chess, or Bibles and chess, excuse me. And that's a lot of fun because if you get to have a thinking match with somebody, it's always pretty fun. So there's some guys online that follow our page that I want to challenge. So if you're hearing this, send me a game, so we'll connect.
Yeah, what's the app?
There's like chess apps. If you got a bougie iPhone like me, you can just send a game and it goes right through. So.
Yeah. So another reason to connect with us, if you like to play chess and you want to take on Lakeith, I've actually never played Lakeith in chess. But I know he's good. Really decent. No, he's good, guys. But if you want to find out, send us a DM on Facebook or Instagram, and he can show you how to connect with him online. And you can play a game.
Christ.
That's true. You can play from a distance.
You can play chess from all over the countries of the world.
Man, well, my son Ransom would be super jealous that that's what you guys do before church. We may have to add that in. He loves playing chess.
Oh, nice.
All right.
But I'm not getting him an iPhone so he can play you. So it's
I feel you.
Yeah, I do think that as believers who want to be laborers in the harvest, it can be hard for us to have free time, like have fun downtime that we don't feel guilty about. And I don't want anyone who's listening to feel guilty about your guilty pleasures, whatever they might be, not smoking other than meat. But just want to be clear. But it's been really interesting how by Brett and I kind of giving each other freedom to do the things that we really love to do, God has really redeemed those things in huge ways. Like even over this past year with COVID, because we couldn't really talk to strangers anymore, it really became key that we had our like little hobbies that we did. My husband, Brett, is a super nerd, as you probably have heard here on the podcast. He's a proud one, so it's not even being rude to say it.
Oh, yeah.
And he plays Dungeons and Dragons, which, boy, I make fun of him so hard for that.
D&D.
And like super love, like our marriage super is really good. Anyway, it's been so cool, honestly. Like he is playing with people in his relationship network. We've talked about that before, in his family and friends that do not follow Jesus. And so he's able to like connect with them on a weekly basis and for hours and hours. Just really throwing D&D under the bus here. But it's been really, really exciting, actually, because I don't think there would have been any other way to connect with these guys. And Brett's just done it in a very natural way that they all really enjoy. And so I'm just excited to see what God's going to continue to do. And for me, I have a book club, you guys, because we all know I like to read. And my book club has become such a special thing to me. And these ladies have almost become like an extension of church. And some of them, they kind of vary in their beliefs, but it's been a really special way to grow closer to them. And I probably wouldn't have otherwise. But over the love of like Little Women, we've really connected, and it's been really great. And the spiritual conversations have really started to outweigh our other conversations. So it's been a very exciting thing to see that what you feel like drawn to in your own life, and for you guys, it's as well. Like I feel like God has really been able to use the things that we just like naturally, just as humans, and I think He made us this way. So it's cool that He can use literally everything for the gospel, even chess and running by yourself.
Right.
So thanks for sharing, you guys. That was really fun, and it's been a fun show. I hope you guys enjoyed it listening, and we hope you'll leave us a message and maybe even review us on iTunes and subscribe and all the good stuff that you should do to support us. We really, really appreciate it. And we would not be doing this if it wasn't for you. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time. Bye, guys.
See you.
Bye, Abby.